everyone, and welcome to another Fresh Fiction Video Book Club. I'm Samantha T, and today's guest is best-selling author Lisa Regan of the Josie Quinn series, and I have so many questions for you. I'm so excited to be able to talk to you tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, Lisa, let's start off with an easy question. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and how did you first get started writing?
I'm originally from Philadelphia. I have lived and worked over a great deal of the state of Pennsylvania. I currently live just outside of Philadelphia now, with my husband and my daughter and my social media icon of a dog, Mr. Phillip. I have worked a lot of different jobs. I've worked in nursing. I was a paralegal for 13 years. I've worked in retail. I taught martial arts. I worked in food service. And before I could write full time, I started writing when I was very young, as soon as I could hold a pen and knew how to put words together. I wrote my first full length novel when I was 11 years old on an old fashioned typewriter. I went to college. My dad said, this is great if you want to write. I think you can definitely do it, but like don't be a starving artist." So go to college, get the degree. So I got one in English, which is not great for the job market, really. But during that time, I wrote another novel that was, an adult novel. When I was in high school, I wrote 4 books. Got to college, got my degree in English. I wrote another book. I went back to grad school to get a degree in education. I ended up not teaching because I just didn't have the commitment that my fellow grad students had to the field. So I went to become a paralegal. And the whole time, during all of this, through all of it, I'm just writing and writing and writing. And finally, in 2004, I believe, I finally had something that I thought was worth, showing to other people. It may have been 2006. It was Finding Claire Fletcher, which was my first novel. And that's when my first novel that was worthy of other people seeing it. And that was when I started to look for, an agent, started to think about getting published.
So, what is it that you think was the trigger point then? Because it's interesting how you phrase that it was 2004 with that one book that you felt it was worthy for someone else to see. What do you think was that shift of the previous books that you had written? And I'm not going to count the one that you did when you were 11, okay? But what was it specifically where it's like, okay, this is the one that I feel in my gut I can really do something with, and I need
2 things. One is just that
to follow through with.
I had just gotten better by that time. I mean, I have been writing since 11, and I was approaching 30 by that time. And so that's a lot of writing. And it just took time. It just took time. I was studying the craft. I was reading books and articles and watching videos and taking online courses and trying to get better. And so I think by the time that I finished that, I was able to look at it and objectively say, this is better than anything I've written before. And the second thing is just that the premise was the most interesting thing I had ever thought of, which is that, a down on his luck detective walks into a bar. He meets a mysterious woman. They have this kind of enigmatic encounter that leaves him, wanting to know more about her. And when he tries to track her down, he finds out that she's been missing for 10 years. And so I just thought that was a lot cooler than any of the ideas I had had before.
So, I mean, with that, do you think the spur of a lot of these is the that you have to have the right premise and the idea, and if you don't have that must I guess hook to it, then everything else is then going to be uphill?
It can be. I think it depends also on your delivery of the premise. But the thing about, being a reader, because I'm also a reader, is that you have to have something that when people read the back of your book or read the description on a website, that they find it interesting enough to order it. So if you don't have something that is going to catch readers' attention, especially with all of the competition that's out there, it's incredible how much talent is out there. Then yeah, I think you're gonna struggle to get readers to come to you initially. Um, if you have a really good premise with your first book or second book, and readers read the book and love it, the hope is that they will stay with you for future books, because not every premise is going to be, a grand slam, knock it out of the park. This is the best thing I ever read.
And that's where I think the refining your craft is also so fascinating too, of spending that time. And I always think it's interesting to see, like, from who had like a BA in English, and how much do you think having those, that more of a formal training, I'll call it a training, from a university or college, how much do you think that aspect of it has helped with your writing, in addition to any other types of training and courses and experience that you had gotten?
It definitely helps. It definitely helps. Now, for my degree, I did not study writing. It was just the study of literature. So I think if you are studying writing under that umbrella to get your degree, you're gonna get a lot more out of it than I probably did. On the other hand, what that degree taught me was to look at a text or a book and deconstruct it to see what was working and what wasn't. You kind of like break down everything that you read to see what is the author trying to accomplish, and how are they achieving that. And so that was really extremely instructive for me and very, very helpful in terms of fiction writing. And the other thing that it teaches you is to organize your ideas before you sit down to write. It teaches you to edit, to read what you've written and be able to identify what's not working or what doesn't fit. So those types of skills for just an English degree without a writing focus, it was extremely useful.
And do you find you're still regularly using those skills then in your initial writing, and then all of the editing that you have to do afterwards?
Yes, most definitely. I use those skills every day. So in that sense, that degree is the gift that keeps on giving. But I never stop learning. I mean, I'm always reading books on the craft. I'm always taking online courses. I'm still reading books by other authors that I love and trying to deconstruct those. So for me, the work is never really done.
So, with all of that, I mean, it's a basic question, but are you a plotter or a pantser?
I used to be a pantser. I found that for me, because there's no wrong way to the right way to write a book is the way that works for you, and everyone's different. But for me, to be a pantser, as fun as it was massively inefficient for me. And I didn't like all the work that I had to do on the back end. So I found that if I try to think ahead a little more and do at least somewhat of an outline, that it just goes smoother, it's easier, and so I've become a lot more of a plotter now.
This is what always kills me whenever we're talking with mystery writers and they tell me, "Oh no, it's a pantser. I never know what's going to happen." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, and we were talking earlier about different red herrings in mysteries and thrillers. I mean, as a plotter and having that, at least a basic outline of, hey, where is this story going? What is the overall premise? Who the main characters are? Like you said, I would think it saves a lot of time on the back end. So, how much of that do you typically have, at least in your brain, as to where are these stories going to go, especially on some of the key plot points, versus as you're writing and suddenly being surprised? of, hey, this kind of came out of nowhere, or boy, let me take this turn, and what do I need to go back and do to allow that?
So I would say that 80% of the book, I know what's going to happen. I've outlined it, I've discussed it with my editor, I've thought it over. I've done like sometimes I'll do a decision tree if I'm not sure which way to go. So I've done, I would say 80% of the work. And then when I sit down to write every single book, there are surprises. There are things that I didn't see coming. There are things that I don't know aren't working until I'm 75% into the book. And I say, oh, that didn't work. And then I have to go back and change. There are things that I realize I didn't think of. Like in this book, Her Dying Secret, I would say 70% into the book, and I realized that I needed a very subtle clue to kind of pull everything together in order to make the twist at the end work. And I hadn't thought of it. I hadn't thought of it in the outline. I hadn't thought of it writing 70% of the book. And I talked to my husband, and he was the one who gave it to me. And I went back and peppered it in, and it worked perfectly. So there's always surprises, but I know, like I said, about 70% of what is going 80, 70, 80% of what's going to happen.
And that's so intriguing to hear, because with Her Dying Secret, this is book number 20 in the Josie Quinn series. So first, congratulations. This is
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank
But,
you.
but then, of course, hearing that you still sometimes encounter these types of problems, even, or at least scenarios, when you are writing a long time series and with characters that you know so well at this point. So with that, I mean, are there still these types of surprises? Maybe not so much as far as the clue that you still need, but are there surprises for you with some of the characters and some of the different subplots that come out?
Definitely. There's always surprises. I will tell you the one that is always the most interesting to me is book 17, which was just nominated for an award. I wrote that. We outlined it. I talked it over with my editor. We went over the outline very closely. We had the killer in mind. I'm working the whole entire book toward the end with this killer, with this one character in mind. And I got 3/4 of the way through, and I started this scene with a completely different character who had not been on screen yet. You had kind of encountered that character through other characters' conversations, but you hadn't met this character on screen. And as I was writing the scene, I realized that this was the killer. Like the
Wow.
person that we had for months that we had been working toward didn't work. It could not be that person. This was the character. And I was very close to my deadline, and I thought, I'm not even get approval for this. I'm just gonna write it. And my editor will be just as surprised as I was. And so that's what I did. And when I sent it to her with that, she absolutely loved it. And that's what we kept.
So, what is your reaction when you kind of have that epiphany? I know as readers, when we suddenly see something, at least for me, I'm in that, oh crap, okay, what did they just do? And you start looking back. So when it suddenly occurs to you, where you've been planning on something else, and it's like, oh no, this is the person who's obviously. Do you have that same oh crap moment, or or
Yeah.
or what are you thinking at that point?
Usually I'm thinking, oh my God, this is really cool. This is so cool. Why didn't I think of this earlier? And then I think, how much work is this going to be to like make this work? How much do I need to go back and layer this in so that it's that it works at the end. Now, in that particular book, I had to change nothing, which is really interesting to me because which makes me wonder, was my mind always working toward that? And I just didn't know it. It was kind of in the shadows, this idea. But most of the time, I have the really, this is so cool moment, followed by, how come I didn't think of this before? And then, oh no, it's going to be so much work to, go back through the manuscript and pepper this all in so that it comes together.
The other thing I've been wondering about is an element of your inspiration, because I know in previous research and interviews that it's the ideas typically begin with a what if set of
Yeah.
questions. What if this happens? Or what if you come about when the body has already been found? But the other element is it seems like there are so many different books that focus on um, some of the side characters where you're also getting their backstory or origins. How does that part of the inspiration come to you of like, okay, I know that this book is going to be Trinity's backstory, or this one is going to be Noah's or the chief? Does that naturally come about, or is that also part of your plan of, okay, it's now time for me to, in one of these books, I'm going to have to dig into this particular side character that everybody has interest in, and it's because I think it's another facet of these stories.
It definitely is. And my editor and I try to plan ahead. So we call those books the personal mysteries because they're related to a series regular character that readers have come to love. And as opposed to a mystery like Her Dying Secret, where there's no relation to Josie or the team, it's simply a case that she was assigned in her capacity as a detective. But the personal books, we talk about kind of where in the series we want them to appear. You know, who's going to go first, what order they're going to come in, how many non-personal books will be between them. That's all stuff that we plan. In terms of their actual backstory, this is where I'm a complete panster and I take some huge gambles because I don't know it. Like Gretchen Palmer, Detective Gretchen Palmer, she comes in book two, book three, and she has this leather jacket. Wrote it in, had no idea what it was from, what it was for, why she wore it, none, until I started writing book four, which is her book, and then it just came to me. And it's the same with Chief Chitwood. His book is book 14. I started seeding in his backstory in book 11. He gives Josie a rosary bracelet. And I didn't know. I had no idea why, what it meant, why he had it. I just knew that that was part of his story. And when I got there, he would let me know. So I let those kinds of things come like kind of organically to me because it's a lot more fun that way. And sometimes it's frustrating because I've planted all these different, facets of these characters, and I get to their book and I say to myself, well, I hope this works. I hope I can create something around these characteristics that I've given them. But I've never had a problem. The characters kind of speak to me. Not in a crazy way, but
But we're all about the crazy, so that's okay if they do. And one of the other things, I mean, mentioning that this is book number 20 in the series, you also announced a couple of years ago that you had signed a 15 book deal for this series,
yes.
which is also extremely unusual because usually when we're talking to authors, and I think previously for you, it was a series of like, okay, here's a 3 book contract, and here's another 3 book, and then six, and it kind of
Yeah.
increases. So now, I mean, even though this is book 20, which is a huge accomplishment, you already know that you've got this 15 book deal where it's planning to go to 35. So how is that coming into play with your overall planning of the series? And does that, I would assume that gives you a lot more leeway and flexibility in planning some of those things out. And kind of, do you have that vision already for maybe, of course, not the nitty gritty details, but kind of the overall arc for the series for another 15?
Yes. Yes. When I signed that contract, we sat down beforehand and looked at what we wanted to do with the rest of the series and where we wanted to go and what kinds of stories we wanted to tell. And so with that many books left in the series, hopefully, if readers still want to read about Josie after 15 more books, it just takes a lot more planning, a lot more thought in terms of, we said, what do we want to bring into the series that's new? What do we want to get rid of from the series? How deeply do we want to go into other series regular characters' lives. What kinds of cases do we want to give Josie and the team? What can we do that's fresh, that's new, that readers haven't seen before? So all of those things went into the decision to do the 15 books. And we have my editor and I have like a working document that just has a list of ideas and different premises. And we've shuffled them around actually a few times so that it just makes more sense for readers to get the most enjoyment and the most impact out of each book. And we just, every time I finish a draft, we look at that list again and we say, does it make sense for us to use the idea that is next in line, or do we want to shuffle them around again? But there's definitely a lot more forethought, a lot more planning.
Well, Lisa, I want to switch over to what we call our fresh fiction facts. These are a series of rapid fire type questions to kind of dig a little bit more under the surface and see what makes you tick. So, with that, our first one, an easy one. Who would you most want to be stuck in an elevator with?
Oh, that's really good. Hmm. Oh, that's that's a hard one. Rapid fire, I'm gonna say Greg Hurwitz.
Oh, yes, that would be fascinating. Yes, we've talked with him. Love him, love his books. Just, yeah, that's a good one. Okay. What is your favorite distraction when you're avoiding writing?
Oh, I can hear my assistant's the smoke coming out of her ears. It's during the baseball season, it's the Philadelphia Phillies. The rest of the year, it's basically anything on Netflix that I can watch in order to procrastinate. A lot of Bridgerton, a lot of Bridgerton.
Well, that is the popular one right now, definitely. Which has been the most challenging secondary character for you to write?
Oh, that's a really good one. I think for me, it was Finn Metner because he's so well adjusted. You know, he didn't I had to have one well-adjusted character who doesn't have a serial killer in their closet because, it's already kind of unrealistic that everyone on the team has, this deep dark secret and, they're being pursued by this terrible killer or these skeletons in their closet. And so I needed one character who had just a very normal life, a very normal childhood, no encounters with criminals other than what he sees on the job. And that was hard to write. It was just hard for me to bring enough complexity to him to do him justice. That was definitely a challenge.
What luxury item can you not live without?
Oh, does my dog count? uh
No,
Luxury
no,
item.
no, because I don't see dogs as luxury items. Those are definitely necessities.
I agree. I would say um bubble bath. I love a good bath and I have to have the bubbles. I just have to.
What is something that can immediately take you out of a story?
Social media. You mean when I'm reading or when I'm writing?
Either way,
Okay,
something that basically kind of breaks your concentration and says,
writing it would be social media. If there's something, if I don't, stay off of it well enough or get rid of my phone, then one look at it and I'm gone for like an hour. Um, but reading, that's really interesting. There's not too much that takes me out of a story, but I will say this. It's like the logic stuff. I read this book and I can't remember the name of it, but the woman in the book, her father had died and she was supposed to inherit her aunt's house. And somehow her father prevented her from doing that. And maybe it's just because I'm a paralegal, but I was like, that's not how that works. If it was the aunt's house, she is the one to bequeath it, not your father. And that I couldn't like get past it. It brought me right out of the it, and really all the author had to do was just drop a line in there that was like the aunt, transferred the title to the dad or something like that. So the logic stuff will take me out immediately.
Yep. No, I can relate to that when it's those things where it's like, this just wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
That distance is too far for you to run in 2 seconds. I mean, whatever it is, it's like, no, you just got this wrong. Just no. What is the craziest thing that you have bought online or ordered off of the TV?
Oh, that's a really good one. The craziest thing. Wow. Um, hmm. I, I can't think of if I'm going to say something and it's going to be like when we get off, I'll think of something even crazier. I would say when we moved to the place that we live now, I went like crazy because we have a pool and I went crazy ordering, like every floaty in existence. And they just kept coming to the house and they were huge. Like you couldn't fit three of them in the pool. And my husband was like, "What are you doing? Stop. We're never going to use all of these."
Okay, with that, what was the most unusual floaty that you got? Did you have like a giant dragon floating out on the pool?
We had a narwhal which kept like flying out of the pool anytime there was wind. It was huge. And then, but the kind of coolest one and one we used to scare my nieces and nephews was one that looked like an actual shark's open mouth. And it had like blood on the teeth and everything.
Okay. What is your favorite go-to snack that you grab from the gas station on a road trip?
Pretty much any kind of pastry that I can get my hands on. I've really never met a pastry that I didn't love. So any pastry is fine.
Okay, okay. Other than books and floaties, what is something that you own a ridiculous amount of?
Oh, I know this one. Tote bags. I have
Oh my
hundreds
gosh.
of them. Yeah, I buy them everywhere we go. If there's a tote bag, I will buy it. I had to thin out my collection last year because it was getting completely out of control. But I love tote bags so much and I can't stop buying them.
Well, they can always come in handy.
Yes,
That's the
yeah.
thing. So you need different sizes, different capability. I mean, I I think that is a very wise and smart thing to have a ridiculous amount of. So that's okay. Okay. Would you rather go back in time to meet your ancestors or travel into the future to meet your descendants?
Oh, back in time for sure. Yeah, I don't like knowing what's going to happen. I would rather go back in time. Definitely, most definitely.
Okay. If you knew that they were real, would you rather encounter a ghost or an alien?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I'm gonna go with alien just because
Okay.
like if it's a ghost, they've already been here. An alien would be completely new information.
Okay. You've been kidnapped, but they return you 2 hours later because you will not stop talking about what?
Oh, books. Books, books and books. Yes, it will be books. As my husband says sometimes, you're nerding out. Yeah, stop.
Well, with that, then, for the Mount Rushmore of authors, who belongs on it? These could be your favorites or the most influential. What four authors do you think should be on there?
All right, I'm gonna go with my favorites. This is a subjective thing. Karen Slaughter, Greg Hurwitz, Dennis Lehane, S.A. Cosby.
Okay.
And it's very hard to narrow it to four, but I would say those four.
Well, I never said that we were going to give you super easy questions on these things. I mean, come on. Okay, what terrible movie do you legitimately enjoy?
Oh, so I have this very, very strange weakness for 80s and 90s rom-coms. I don't know if I could pick just one. I'm trying to think if there's one that I watch over and over again. Oh, wow. You know what? I would say Addicted to Love, the one with Meg Ryan and Matthew Broderick, where they're both stalking their exes and then they fall in love.
Oh, yeah. Lots of comedy in that one, definitely. Okay, let's see. What or where do you consider to be your ideal paradise?
Oh, that's a good question too. So, if we're not counting Citizens Bank Park, which is where the Phillies play, I would say a beach. I spent like, like most of my life in the mountains. Beautiful, love it, but I do like a beach. I don't like to go in the water, but I like to put my feet in and I like to sit in front of it and read. With the breeze, I just love it.
What is your most dog-eared or reread book? The one that you just keep going back to over and over.
Oh, um, of all time or just like in my genre?
Either one.
Well, that's a really good question. All right, I'm gonna say the one I've read the most over and over and over again. Like the paperback fell apart. Karen Slaughter's Blindsided.
And what was your favorite book to read to your daughter when she was younger?
Oh, the Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus when she was very small. It was very fun. I would do a dramatic reading of it, and oh, she just loved it. I would read it over and over and over again every day.
Well, and of course, even though we have her dying secret with us right now, we're always wondering what should we be expecting next from you and when.
Book 21 will come out in September. I was told the title, but I'm not allowed to share it yet. So you guys just have to wait for that. But it's done. I've written it. I'm editing it now, and it will be out. I want to say September 14th. It's mid-September. I know that.
And with that, then, where is the best place for our readers and listeners to keep up with what's going on with you, find out more, and eventually find out the title of that next book?
The best central location to go to would be my website, which is www.lisaregan.com. From there, you can get on all my social media platforms and you'll get all the purchase links and that kind of stuff. I spend a lot of time on Facebook, so that would be the second best place to find me is my author page. We will post updates constantly. So we'll post them over and over again because I tend to recommend a lot of other authors. And so we have to keep kind of posting so that those updates don't get lost.
Well, with more than 4 million books in print and with Her Dying Secret being number 20, which is a major accomplishment in any kind of series, but for readers to find out and the latest goings on of the Josie Quinn series, you should definitely check out Lisa, find out what's going on. And Lisa, once again, thanks a lot for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.